You finally saved $10,000. It took discipline. It took restraint. It may have taken years. And now you're staring at that number in your account. 10,000. It doesn't feel powerful. It doesn't feel life-changing. It feels modest. Most people reach this moment and think, that's it? Because $10,000 doesn't change your lifestyle. It doesn't buy freedom. It doesn't impress anyone. But here's what most people don't realize. $10,000 at 25 isn't about what it buys today. It's about what it becomes over time. If you invest $10,000 at age 25 and let it compound at about 8% annually, by age 65, it quietly grows to around $300,000. Not through clever tricks, not through risky bets, just through patience. Compounding works slowly at first. In year 1, you barely notice it. In year 5, it still feels small. But compounding doesn't move in straight lines. It bends upward. The first decade builds the base. The second builds momentum. The third builds scale. The fourth creates transformation. This is why that first $10,000 matters. Not because it's large, but because it starts the clock. And once time is on your side, everything becomes easier. If the math is so clear, why don't more people start early? Because at 25, retirement feels far away. 40 years feels abstract. Your brain values today more than tomorrow. $10,000 now feels real. $300,000 later feels imaginary. So people wait. They say they'll start when income rises, when life feels stable, when debt is gone. But stability rarely arrives perfectly, and income alone doesn't create discipline. Discipline creates discipline. If you delay investing from 25 to 35, that same $10,000 becomes about $150,000 instead of $300,000. Same investment, same return, half the result. Not because of bad choices, because of lost time. Time is the most powerful variable in investing. It matters more than income, more than intelligence. Someone investing modestly at 25 often ends up ahead of someone earning much more who starts later. The earlier investor doesn't need aggressive contributions. They let time carry the weight. Those first 10 years are expensive to lose. They don't feel important while you're living them, but mathematically, they shape everything that comes after. Here's something most people misunderstand about compounding. It feels slow for a long time. At 8%, your money roughly doubles every 9 years. That means your $10,000 becomes $20,000 in your mid-30s, then $40,000 in your 40s, then $80,000 in your early 50s, then $160,000 in your early 60s. Most of the growth happens late. That's why compounding is deceptive. People quit during the slow phase. They panic during market drops. They assume nothing is happening. But the early years are foundation years. The middle years are patience years. The later years are harvest years. Compounding rewards endurance. It favors consistency over excitement. And something else compounds too: behavior. As your investments grow, you become calmer. You save more intentionally. You spend more thoughtfully. The money grows, but so does your mindset. That's the quiet acceleration nobody shows you. Something deeper happens when you invest early. It's not just your account balance that changes. Your identity changes. You stop seeing yourself as someone who's trying to save. You become someone who owns assets. That shift matters more than most people realize. When you see yourself as an investor, small decisions start to feel different. You begin to ask better questions. Do I really need this purchase? Could this money work harder? What does this decision look like in 5 years? This doesn't require extreme frugality. It requires awareness. Early investing builds confidence long before it builds wealth. You start thinking in decades instead of weeks. You stop reacting emotionally to market swings because your timeline is long. You don't need perfect timing. You just need consistency. People who invest early tend to negotiate better, change jobs with less fear, and tolerate less financial stress. Not because they're rich, because they know their future is already in motion. That first $10,000 creates posture. It gives you quiet confidence. You don't rush decisions. You don't chase shortcuts. You move calmly because time is already on your side. This is how wealth really begins. Not with a massive windfall, with a shift in how you see yourself. Many people believe they need a high salary before investing, but income is not the main driver of wealth. Time and consistency matter far more. Someone who invests modestly at 25 often ends up ahead of someone earning much more who starts later. Not because they're smarter, because they started. Income helps later, but early action matters more. When you begin investing early, every raise becomes optional growth instead of delayed repair. You increase contributions naturally. You don't feel behind. You don't feel pressured to take extreme risks. You let compounding do the heavy lifting. This is why average earners who start early often outperform high earners who start late. Wealth is not built by dramatic moments. It's built by boring habits repeated for decades. Early investors don't chase performance. They protect consistency. They don't panic in downturns. They understand volatility is temporary, but time is permanent. When your timeline stretches long enough, short-term noise loses its power. You stop asking how fast you can grow. You start asking how long you can stay invested. That question changes everything. There is an emotional benefit to early investing that rarely gets discussed: peace. People who invest early don't feel calm because they're wealthy. They feel calm because they've removed urgency from their lives. They know they're building. They know they're not late. They know time is compounding quietly in the background. That awareness changes how they show up in the world. They make career moves with less fear. They don't panic over unexpected expenses. They don't feel trapped by every financial decision. Money stops feeling like a threat. It becomes a tool. This is why financial confidence often looks invisible. It doesn't show up as luxury. It shows up as breathing room, as patience, as the ability to say no. Early investing gives you that space. It buys you time. And time is the most valuable asset you can own. You don't need perfection. You don't need huge returns. You just need to begin while time is still on your side. Because once you feel what it's like to have compounding working for you, you never want to go back. This is where the story changes. Somewhere in your 40s and 50s, compounding begins to feel different. The numbers finally start moving. Your account grows more in a single year than you once saved in several. This is the acceleration phase. And most people never reach it, not because it doesn't exist, but because they exit too early. They stop investing, they pull out during downturns, they lose patience right before momentum appears. Compounding rewards those who stay. The early years build foundation. The middle years build belief. The later years deliver results. By the time your original $10,000 passes $100,000, the growth becomes noticeable. By the time it crosses $200,000, it feels powerful. But this phase only happens after decades of quiet consistency. This is why early investors don't chase quick wins. They protect their timeline. They understand that exponential growth does not announce itself. It arrives slowly, then suddenly. And when it does, it changes everything. People often believe successful investors are smarter. They aren't. They are steadier. They invest through uncertainty. They continue during boring years. They stay during uncomfortable markets. Consistency beats brilliance. You do not need perfect timing. You do not need advanced strategies. You need the discipline to keep going when progress feels invisible. This is how average earners quietly outperform emotional traders. Wealth is built by repeating simple actions over long periods. Early investors understand that missing a few good years can destroy decades of progress. So they remain invested. They automate contributions. They reduce friction. They make investing boring. And boring works. Over 40 years, this approach quietly turns $10,000 into hundreds of thousands of dollars. Not through complexity, through repetition. Let's be honest. Not everyone starts at 25. Many begin at 35, or 40, or later. Starting late doesn't mean failure. It just means you must compensate with higher savings or longer timelines. When you start late, income becomes more important. Discipline becomes sharper. But the lesson remains the same. Time is the multiplier. The earlier you begin, the less pressure you feel later. Starting late doesn't remove possibility, it increases urgency. This is why today matters more than perfection. Wherever you are right now is simply your starting point. The worst move is waiting longer. Early investors gain something beyond money: options. They can leave bad jobs, handle emergencies, think strategically. They don't feel trapped, they feel flexible. This flexibility compounds alongside wealth. They negotiate from strength. They make decisions calmly. This is walking away money. It does not require millions. It starts with momentum. Early investing builds that momentum quietly. The lesson of $10,000 is not about returns. It is about direction. It shows you that small decisions compound, that early action matters, that consistency wins. $10,000 invested early becomes proof that your future responds to your habits. It turns hope into structure. It replaces anxiety with progress. This is how ordinary people build extraordinary stability. $10,000 at 25 doesn't make you rich, it makes you early. And being early changes everything. It removes urgency. It builds confidence. It lets time carry weight for you. If you haven't started yet, that's okay. Start now. Not perfectly, just intentionally. Because real wealth isn't loud. It's patient. It's quiet. And it begins the moment you decide your future matters. Stay connected. We're building this calmly, step by step.